Hey guys, it's Jamie and Luna. She's settling in for the long haul. So today I have a bunch of plant chores to do. So I thought I would take you along and see what we can get done in the next hour before I have to leave for work. I have a lot of stuff here that I'm trying to get through. So let me just quickly show you. I have a Hoya australis I want to get potted up. It's got a pretty great root system at this point, so I think it's safe to pot that up. I have a philodendron birkin that I also want to get potted up. There are the roots on that one. I have no idea what I'm going to do with those roots that are like sticking up, but we'll see. And then I want to pot this little succulent up. This is the ruby necklace, I believe. So I want to pot that up to bring to work. These are all going to go to work with me, or most of them, because I am getting into a more highly lit window at work. So I also bought this Peperomia puteolata, which I think has actually changed to Peperomia tetragona. If you know the truth about that, let me know. I just recently read that the puteolata changed names to tetragona. So I don't know, I like tetragona better, so that's what I'm gonna go with. So I'm gonna pot that up, but when I bought that, it came like this. And so this was like falling over. I guess it can be a trailing plant, but at the same time, I wanted to have two plants. So this one's currently in water. I'm actually gonna switch that over to perlite and see how that grows for roots in that. This has been in water for a couple of days, no roots or anything so far. But anyway, that's what we've got. So I've got some potting, I've got some propagations to check in on. There's just a lot going on today. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but whenever I start repotting things, I get to the point where I'm just like, I just want to keep going. So I find a plant to repot, I repot it, and then I see one next to it that needs to be repotted. Am I alone in that? I don't know. It's how I do my housework too, so it may just be me. I just can't stop. So anyway, we're gonna start with the Hoya australis because this plant in my window has grown like crazy fast. So I'm excited to bring this one to work, put it in my window at work and see how it does there. But here's the root system on these cuttings. They're going crazy. So definitely a good time to pot those up. So I am gonna start by putting my potting mixture in my pot. So this potting soil mix is just regular potting soil, coconut coir, and some perlite. So I can't really give you measurements for, this many parts perlite, this many parts potting soil, because I'm not really good at that. But I would say, if I had to guess, I would say like 4 parts potting soil, 1 part perlite, and 1 part coconut coir, I guess. So because this is for my Hoya, I'm also gonna add a handful or 2 of orchid bark. We're just gonna kind of throw that in, and I'll mix it into the pot because Hoyas in nature grow kind of on trees and hang onto trees and grab onto things. So it really helps to have some bark in the potting mix. So this is just, I don't know. I love making up potting mixes because I just think it's like almost like chemistry. I don't know if it is chemistry, but it feels like chemistry. So it's just kind of a fun thing for me to do. So I'm gonna add just a little bit. I'm gonna leave it like an inch or 2 below the lip of the pot, and then I'll throw in a couple more pieces of the bark. I never use gloves when I pot things. I love the way soil feels, even though I'm about to go to work and I'll probably get soil all under my fingernails. I don't care. I love the way it feels. So I've got this filled up pretty well with a little bit of extra room in case I want to add, obviously I'm going to add the plant, but in case I want to add some soil after. So I'm going to dig like a pretty deep hole down in here so I can stick those rooted plants down in. I also have this tool that I use all the time to kind of dig deep holes or skinny holes. I love this thing. I got it actually with some little growers pots on Amazon. It just came with a set. So I'm gonna grab these. I'm gonna stick them down into the soil. I probably should have made a bigger hole, and actually, now that I think about it, I'm gonna take my ring off because that's gonna be a mess. And then I'm just gonna make like a deeper hole in here because these roots are longer than I thought. So we're gonna go deeper. I'm gonna grab this out again, And then we're gonna just plop these into the soil, just kind of like digging down a little further. And then we're gonna cover these roots up with soil. So hopefully you can see that pretty well. I have one little piece here that's not under the soil very well. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of that soil, but that's gonna be my Hoya. So cute. I can't wait to put that in my window at work. I think it's gonna be really nice there. My coworkers are seeing a growing jungle at work, but it's just another place that that I can put plants. I'm a librarian, so I've added plants to the children's room too, and plan to add more. It's just a matter of finding plants that are child safe, just in case something gets pulled down and chewed on or something like that, because kids do things like that. So anyway, there's my little Hoya australis coming out of that pot. Super cute, and this one is already trailing so much, so I'm really excited to see how that does at my work. So let's move on to the Birkin. Okay, next up is this Birkin with the crazy roots. I am not sure how this is going to work out, but I have this little pot. I think it's going to be kind of the perfect size for this little guy, and this one is going to work as well. So I have like this really bright window, but I'm probably going to put him off to the side of it just a little bit because I don't want him in the direct sun. It's got like very direct bright sunlight all afternoon, so I don't really want to stick him in that bright of sunlight, but I think he's going to be really happy near that window. So I'm not going to add the bark to this mixture because this is not Hoya, but I am using the same mixture otherwise, the soil and perlite and coconut coir. So, and I just add those to have a little bit more of a moisture absorption so that I don't overwater things or so that water doesn't stay in there too long. I also find that it really helps with keeping fungus gnats away. I have had no fungus gnat problem with my plants, so that's really nice. So these roots, I don't know, look how much they're sticking up. I'm hoping I can kind of train them under the soil without breaking them, but I don't know. This guy kind of did whatever he wanted. So I'm just digging a little bit of a hole there. I'm sure they'll move down once I get them under soil and it'll be fine, but I'm just kind of pushing them down a little bit, those roots, and then everything else is already good and under the soil. So I'm just gonna push the soil down around. I'm not packing it too tightly, but I'm just pushing it down a little bit. I could use a little bit more soil in that pot. Just gonna pick this guy up. All right. I think I'm gonna add just a little more soil around the edges and then we'll be good to go. And we're just gonna kind of scoop that in there. There we go. We're gonna push that around. Yeah, that's gonna be super cute for work, adorable. So because I'm moving desks soon, I decided to kind of change the decor around my desk, and I'm doing like a tropical theme, so it fits in really well with my plants because I also really love hot weather and just being warm and visiting tropical places. So anyway, there's my little Birkin. So cute. I think that guy is going to thrive. So excited. I like that it, this particular leaf just looks gorgeous. So I'm going to go get some water in this guy and put it over on the counter so I don't forget to take him to work today. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just doing the same potting mix for this peperomia that I used for the other two, minus the orchid bark, of course. So here's this little peperomia tetragona. I got this at one of my local shops. So it's got pretty good roots here. It just looks like it's one little cutting, so we'll see how it does. We'll see how that little cutting I took does because I'm not so sure how that's gonna go. But I just have this little pot. I don't want to move it to too big a pot, and I've had this in the house for about a week now, maybe a little bit less. I think it'll be okay, even though you're supposed to give it a little more time. The pot it's in, it looks pretty pot bound, and it's just tiny, and the soil's drying up really fast. So here's the little root ball there. I'm gonna kind of break it up a little bit. I don't break it up a ton because I don't like to mess with the roots too much, but It's very dry on top. I'm just going to get rid of some of that older soil, and then I'll plop it right in this little container. This one I think is going to stay at my house. These leaves are almost fake feeling, like they're very thick. They're really hard actually. Like you can almost hear tapping on them. So it's just a very interesting leaf for sure. So I'm just going to plop that in that little container. And then I do have a smaller spoon here, so I'm just going to use my smaller spoon to kind of add a little soil and around. I could probably do the same thing with my hands because this is so tiny. I love this little plant though, it's adorable. So I need to find a good place for it in my house, but I have a window in my kitchen that faces sort of northwest. It doesn't really get direct sun at all during the day, but it gets sort of indirect light all day, and a lot of my plants are very happy in that window, so I tend to just kind of keep a lot of my starter plants in that window just to give them a great start. So there's that one. Oh my goodness, that's adorable. So there's my little Peperomia tetragona or puteolata. I'm not sure which, but if you know, please let me know. I would love to be calling this the right thing. So that's done. Gonna add a little water to that guy, and then we'll move on to the next one. As kind of a side note, I've found that Peperomia do really well in just about every kind of lighting situation. I've had them thrive in lower light, I've had them thrive in higher light, so I think Peperomia are pretty easy plants to grow, most of them anyway. So let's see, the next thing I think I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna stick with all the potting soil chores to start with. So the next thing I'm gonna do is pot up this little ruby necklace, and I have the bigger one upstairs. I just took a couple little cuttings of this one. Oop. So these are the cuttings. They're a little crazy, but I love the way they look. So I want to bring this one to work as well. So because this is a succulent, I am going to grab my succulent potting mix. And this is going in a really small pot. So I'm just going to use a little bit of potting mix in with the mix I've already made. I have some left in the bowl already. So I'm just going to kind of mix all of that together because I think it'll be okay. I might add just a little bit more perlite because I definitely want to keep the moisture kind of out of this one a little bit more. So I just mixed up a little bit more of that. We'll even add in a tiny little bit more of the coconut coir. And then I am going to, because this little pot I have doesn't have drainage, I am going to add a few little river rocks, which I also get at Lowe's. It always feels a little bit strange buying rocks. But if you have a pot without a hole, definitely want drainage. I wouldn't recommend this as a first choice for anything, but this was the only pot that I had in this size, and I knew these cuttings wouldn't take up much space. So I am going to put some potting soil in this little container. And there we go. There. So there's still a little bit of room left at the top. I'll show you in a second how much room I have left there. There you go. And then I'm just going to use like the skinny end of my little poker here and make a couple of holes so there will be enough room for both stems. And so I'm going to take my cuttings and I'm going to pull off the first couple of leaves, probably the first 4, maybe 5 leaves there. And I'm just going to poke that right into the hole. I have had super good luck propagating this guy in soil. Just seems to be fine with it. I think it's maybe just not the pickiest plant in the world, so that's a good thing because it's easy for maybe people who aren't as good with plants. But I'm going to pull off, you can see I'm just plopping off the bottom leaves so that those little nodes right there will have roots grow out of them. So I'm going to plop that one in the soil as well. Kind of cover that over. This little guy is adorable, and I really kind of I'm trying to maneuver it around. These are sort of these stems were already sort of leaning, so I'm trying to keep them from doing that. But anyway, all right, there we go. We've got these guys all potted up, and I'm going to go throw a little bit of water in these. And then this will get put in my little work pile as well. All right. Yeah, that looks cute like that. So, okay, next up are the propagations that I want to do. So I've got a couple of different propagation methods I'm going to be using today. So one is perlite with water mixed in, and then one is sphagnum moss. So I've taken a couple of cuttings of my Monstera adansonii. I've taken just a couple of little leaf cuttings, and I think I might cut them once more because each of these sections also has a little node coming out, so roots should come out of both of those. And then I can do the same thing with this one. I took this cutting, there's a node right there, there's another node sort of right there. So I can really cut these into a couple more sections. I could even cut them into 3 sections just to make a fuller plant when I do repot it. And then I also took a couple of cuttings from my peperomia. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's a glabella. I don't know. These are small cuttings, but it's got the red stem. It's really, really cute, and it's doing super well in my window. So I just wanted to try a couple cuttings and see how it does. So I'm going to go prepare that sphagnum moss because it's a bit of a mess, and I'm going to do that off camera. But all I do is grab this dry sphagnum moss. I got it on Amazon. This is long fibered sphagnum moss, and this is by Mosser Lee. This is by Mosser Lee, and so it's just like dry sphagnum moss. I add some water to it, and then just you know, wring it out a little bit so it's not damp, but it's moist. So I'm gonna go do that off camera, and then I'll show you the little container I have it in. All right, so here's my little prop box. The nice thing about these take-home food containers is that they work really nicely for propagation boxes, and you can totally see what's inside and how it's doing. So I love repurposing things like that for propagations. So you can also use those little like Olivia's Organics salad containers, those sort of rectangular boxes. They're clear and make awesome propagation boxes. So I'm gonna take this cutting. I'm just going to chop it into a couple more pieces. I'm using kitchen scissors. I could probably use better scissors, but I'm not. I do need to invest in a pair of nice scissors for this kind of thing. And then I'm taking this other cutting, and we'll see how they do in the propagation box. These are brand new little baby leaves, so we're going to see. We're going to test it out. I'm just going to stick them down into the sphagnum moss and make sure that the nodes are under, like in the moss, so that they can have all those nutrients when they grow, and then we'll check in on them in a week or so here. I have never had to add water to a propagation box. I'm also going to throw these little peperomia pieces in here, see how those do. Yeah, I haven't had to add water to a propagation box, and I think it's just because so much moisture stays in this thing because it turns itself into a little greenhouse. So I'm going to just pull off the bottom leaf of that peperomia and just kind of stick it in there. Hopefully these won't get smushed by the cover, but we'll see in just a second. And then I'm going to put the cover on. There we go, a cute little propagation box. And then I can very easily check and open this up and make sure the leaves are doing well, but for the most part, I'm going to keep it closed and just kind of let it do its thing. All right, we've got one more propagation here. I am running out of time, so that's good. I'm going to put this propagation in an area that gets indirect light, not super bright light. I don't want to burn anything as it's trying to kind of make its way into the world. And these little leaves are small enough and just kind of, I don't want to overwhelm them with extra light. So I'll put them in indirect light and see how they do, probably in my window that I put most of my other propagations in. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is grab some perlite, put it into this container here. I'm going to dump the water out and clean it out, but I'm going to put some perlite in here, some wet perlite. So I'm going to measure the perlite in here, and then I'm going to dump it into another container, make sure all of the moisture is out, all of the water is out, and then it'll just be the moist perlite in here. So let me go get this cleaned out and we'll get that started. So I'm just going to show you how I did this really quickly. So this is why you wear a mask because there's perlite dust in the air, and I just breathed it in and now my face is all red. I filled up this jar like to the top with perlite, then I poured that dry perlite out into this bowl and then poured enough water to cover it up. It's been sitting in this bowl for a couple minutes now, so I'm just going to go squeeze out all the water. I'm just going to use a little measuring cup to scoop that out of there and into this jar. All right, so there's our jar. It's, mostly filled up with the perlite and it's just wet right now. So I'm gonna plop this little cutting into the perlite. I've cut off the couple of bottom leaves so that it will have room to grow some roots, hopefully. And then I'm just gonna kind of stick that down into the perlite, and I'm gonna pour a little bit of water into this jar, just so there's water up to maybe here or so on the bottom of the jar. There's already a little bit in there just from the perlite itself, but I'm going to add just a little bit more and then we'll see how this does. And then we're done with all this. I'm going to do some cleanup and then we're going to check in on the propagations that I took a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so I think this is going to be our last check-in on these guys because it's been like 2.5 weeks and I feel like we can get a pretty good idea of who's doing the best root growth in these 4 different propagation methods. So this was the Rhaphidophora tetrasperma that I propagated. I think it was like 2.5 weeks ago. So I've done, this is the 3rd check-in that I've done, or the 2nd check-in that I've done. The first time I kind of showed how I did each propagation method. So let's start with the soil since we can't really look at those roots anyway. So this is the soil prop. You can see these leaves are flopped over. They're not doing very well. I'm trying to decide if I need to cut those off completely because they are just not healthy, but there's a little leaf kind of, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of growing up the side of this one, so I want to see if that does anything. This leaf, however, is super healthy, so we're gonna see. I'm just gonna leave it and see if it does anything, but it's looking okay for now. No idea what those roots look like, but I don't know. The plant itself is looking okay. Next, we have the water prop, and I will tell you I cheated on this one. So these roots were doing absolutely nothing, and I decided to cut off the bottoms and then start all over. So this is 1 week of root growth once I started over. So I chopped off like the bottom 2 nodes or something like that, and that's what we've got for root growth. So the problem with this is that I don't know how to plant it once this grows, because now it's going to be like up to here under the soil because this root is right here. So we'll see what happens with that one, but I'm just leaving it in the water for now because it's doing really well now. Before it was doing nothing. So if you have that problem that you're not seeing any root growth, especially on a Monstera type plant, within a week or so, you should see root growth on Monsteras within like a few days. But this one, because it wasn't growing and I chopped it off and is doing really well now, I kind of learned that you can start all over. So this is, the roots are doing great and it hasn't been very long. It's been like 4 or 5 days. So next up was the perlite method. These leaves look super, super healthy. So we're gonna pull this out and see what we've got. Let's see if we can knock some of this perlite off. So we do have a little root growing right out of the one node that was on there. I don't know if you can see it. It's right here. So that method seems to be doing really well. And not only that, but these leaves are super, super healthy and they're not flopping over in any way. The perlite has stayed pretty moist. I have only added a tiny bit of water to it just to kind of keep the moisture up. And other than that, this is a really healthy cutting. So last up, we had the sphagnum bag, and this one I made a little mistake on. So I'm going to show you because it's good to know. So this is the cutting that I put in sphagnum. So you can see it's got an awesome root right there. It's kind of got sphagnum all around it, but there's an awesome root right there. There was another root somewhere, but anyway, there was a great root right here, and this was too close to the sun. So unfortunately, that root kind of died off, which is sad. But this root is doing great. There's another tiny little root right there, which you may or may not be able to see, but this is a crazy healthy root. So the sphagnum bag has done really well. The leaves look great, and I'm gonna keep that going for a while longer, but out of the sun because that was not smart. So lessons learned from this propagation: 1, you can start all over again in water if the roots aren't growing, and 2, don't put the sphagnum bag near sun. So I would say we have a couple of winners in this contest. I would say the soil probably is not the best way to propagate. Even though one leaf is doing well, the other two leaves look so sad. So I would say soil is probably not the winner in this contest. These two, I would say of these two, the water propagation is doing so much better because look at those roots. This root is healthy and growing, but very slowly. So perlite works, but not quite as quickly. Water, once you get the right balance, seems to work really well. And, you know, once I cut off that bottom, those roots are now going a little bit crazy. So that's great. And the sphagnum bag, I think if that other root had stayed out of the sun, would have been probably the clear winner. So I'm going to call sphagnum the winner for this. And then water is a close second, I would say. So not really what I expected from the beginning. I thought water would be the winner, but we really had to mess around with the water a little bit for it to do really well. So sphagnum those roots grew great. I am really happy with this propagation method. I haven't had to add a single drop of water to this bag because the moisture has stayed in there because it's that little greenhouse effect. And yeah, this has been a really fun experiment. So I'm going to stop talking. I feel like I've been talking for hours. I probably have at this point, and it's really time for me to go to work. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I'm going to continue to do content like this. I'm going to do a houseplant tour in a couple of days, so that'll be uploaded soon, but I'm really excited to share my house full of plants. So if you'd like to see that, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.